Hello and welcome to our feature podcast episode with our wonderful artist, Caoimhe Heaney. Caoimhe, welcome to this conversation today where we're going to talk about you and we're going to just learn a little bit more about who you are, where you come from, and what your art is all about. Caoimhe, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you very much, Eamonn. How are you?
I'm doing great. Very excited to hear about your work. And just to kind of get a little bit more into how you make, where your influences came from, about what you're doing now, and where you're planning to go as well in the future as well with your work. And I just can't wait to to get started. So let's get started. The first question that I'm asking in these feature episodes is about where your initial creative instinct came from. Like, where did the spark start?
As far as I can remember back, it's kind of always been there. That was all. I have a sister that's much louder. She's the older sister. She's very bubbly, gorgeous personality. I was a little bit always more introverted, so the way I expressed myself was through art and drawing. And I have like thousands of sketchbooks that I used to use. And I remember even from a young age, I'd sign and date them because I was like, they're going to be worth money someday.
I'd say they're worth a fortune now, Caoimhe, with all of your fame coming through, with all the
Oh
new work
yeah,
you're making. And so, is there anything like any particular style that you were? Can you remember? Like, were you like a crayon user or a pencil user, or what was your go-to tool?
well, obviously at the beginning there was probably anything I could find. But definitely loved pencil drawing, black and white, graphite, pencils. I used to love doing it. I kept trying to go as realistic as possible. I can remember we went to Disney in Paris one year. I think I must have been about 8 or 9, and I got like a cool sketchbook from the Disney studios, and I was like, yeah, I could be an animator. And I was like dating everything, and I was like, yeah, I can do this.
And did you find that like were you watching Disney cartoons and thinking I'd love to be making those cartoons, or was that part of your thought process?
Not really. When we went to the studio part, 'cause I can remember we went to this place where they showed us how they drew and how they created, was it Mushu from Mulan, and
Hmm.
how they drew him, and I like found that really fascinating. And I was quite young. I still drew before that, but I really kind of was like, okay, this is a skill I can make money off it, maybe. And I kind of that was really kind of when I was like, okay, we're gonna sign and date everything. But I always loved art, and I can remember going to my mom would bring us to museums and art galleries, no matter where we went on holidays. And I loved Vincent van Gogh, so I can always remember like looking at their sketchbooks, and they were all signed and dated, and I was like, yeah, I'll have some of those sketchbooks.
From like the point of view of your child self, why was it so important that you signed and dated them?
Oh, I was convinced that I'm going to be famous.
Okay, good.
That was yeah, that
And
was pretty much
do you
it.
still think like that? Do you still think like that?
Not anymore.
Absolutely.
Not
Well,
the
why
last
not?
probably.
Why not? You
Oh,
need to start thinking
life.
like that. Maybe that's what's stopping you from becoming even more famous than what you are now.
Maybe.
Yeah, get back into thinking if I have to sign this now because I'm going to be famous. Put it out
Yeah.
there into the universe and all that.
Yeah, hopefully.
So when you so this like what age are we talking about here now, Quiva?
I say like I say probably I can remember really doing sketchbooks probably from 6 upwards.
Wow.
Never really stopped. Yeah. Very young. My grandmother was always quite arty, but she lived in England and we lived here in Cork. So I didn't get to see her much, but she'd make her own cards and send them to us.
Oh,
So there was always a bit of an influence.
yeah.
So I think, and I loved that. And I kept loads of them. So they're here somewhere in this house.
Oh, that's so sweet. And what about at home? Was there like were your parents supportive of your art making?
They were, yeah, they were very supportive. Always like buying sketchbooks, like always from a very young age, like Santa would always bring paints for me. My sister got dolls and other things, but I'd get loads of paints and drawing pads. I think it was there and it was nurtured from a very young age.
Oh, that's amazing. So let's move a little bit further into your timeline. So when you went to secondary school, and obviously it becomes a bit more specific with the likes of like taking on art as a subject. You did art as a subject in secondary school.
Oh yeah, that was number one choice. That was all I cared about.
Oh, that's so cool. And so like in the art room, was that just like a haven for you?
Yeah, I was very at peace there. I wasn't a very big social butterfly as I am now, but that was where I loved being. Like I loved going to art. So I didn't have like I had a few friends, but we had very close knit. But like I wasn't the popular girl. I was that arty kid that just went to art class and loved it. Kind of typical quiet arty child.
And during your like secondary school art life, was there anything or any point that you remember specifically where you're like, actually, do you know what? This is something I really want to do. This is something I want to pursue. Was there something that kind of was that moment in time, that defining factor, that defining moment?
I kind of always had like when I was a child, I was very ambitious. So I kind
Hmm.
of wanted to be a bit of everything. I wanted to be a scientist, I wanted to be a writer, a poet, but artist was always there. And it was the one thing that stuck with me. Um, and then and then there was like art teachers, and I was like, okay, like there were so many more options that you could see as you grew up, being like you could go back and do art, you could teach art. And I had some great art teachers. I had an art teacher called Miss Doolin, and she's quite strict, but like God, she was amazing. Like she'd get the best out of you, and she'd ask you, why are you doing this? And you'd kind of go, because I want to. You're like 13, 14, and she'd be like, no, no, come on, why? And she'd think about it with you, and she'd kind of go through processes, and she was really amazing, and she really kind of helped me grow from, I say, what was I, 14 to maybe 15, 16. So she
Hmm.
was really kind of she was a strong person, but really helped you and kind of nurtured you.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, and like it's great to have that support behind you, even during your teenage years, where where it could have gone either way. It could have been a case where it's like, well, why are you doing this, and where a lot of people experience. So you had great nurturing at home, you had really good support in school, and you're already getting the whole conceptual questioning before you even enter the third level round. So like I mean your foundation is brilliant. So like what made you decide to do this in college then into university?
I just felt like I couldn't do it. Not that I couldn't do anything else. I didn't want to do anything else. No.
Mm.
Going to third level to do it, there was a few questions at home being like, are you sure? Are you sure you want this type of career? Will there be a career? So and I was like, nope. I was like, this is what I'm doing. I can be quite stubborn. So I was like, what are you on about? And again, I used to be like, Mom, I'm gonna be famous. It's fine.
Well, look, at least you had the self-confidence. So when you went into college, just let's before we go into the college world, what were you making as an 18-year-old, as a 17, 18-year-old? What sort of work were you making?
I did a lot of watercolors. I loved watercolors. So I actually went to another art class outside school when I was, I don't know if it was the end of, could have been the end of primary school, start of secondary school. Um, and she was a little old woman and she did their classes in her house and you just bring your own watercolors and she'd help you draw and she had all these books. She had a cat that would just walk across the table. It was lovely. It was just a really nice space for, I think it was like an hour and a half. You just sit there and paint. Um, and so I used to love doing watercolors, like the kind of quickness of them. You could change them. You can, if you messed up, or you could add a bit more water and dilute it. It was beautiful. Like it was a really nice time. So I used watercolors a lot, I think, up until probably college. So that was my main medium was drawing and watercolors.
Oh wow, amazing. So then you went into the Crawford and you did your undergrad there. How was that experience for you?
Mixed emotions though. It's a hard college. It's they really do gruel you, but like I've made some amazing friends, some a lot of people I still know today. So, you come out with lots of lovely friendships and people who support you and help you. Um, and it did make me like I changed a lot throughout those couple of years. So I when I went in thinking I'm gonna be a painter, that was like slightly dashed away from me. Like I was told not to paint. They kind of went, just don't. And I was like, oh, well, what do I do now? So I did dive into photography. And photography is actually something my mom always did. So my mom used to have a SLR film camera. So that's what we used to use on holidays, and I still have it, so I can kind of use it sometimes. haven't used it in a while, but so I kind of went into photography and everything that could do, and it did open up a lot of doors and a different way of thinking.
So you say throughout your time in the Crawford that you had changed a lot and you took on photography, which is an amazing medium, and you're a beautiful photographer as well. So why did you feel that you had to go with what was said to you? Why couldn't you push the painting yourself or continue with that?
Um, I don't really know. I found photography quite easy, like in a good way that I kind of thought in pictures, so I could kind of go, I can take a photo of this, go into the digital lab, manipulate it if I wanted to.
Hmm.
Where I don't know, like I could draw and I could paint, but it was much more of things I saw. Like I maybe limited my imagination a
Okay.
little bit. I don't know if I had that skill then to do it. Like I do sketches and things like that, but there was like as you know, there were so many great painters in our year. Like it was could have been dwarfed by them, I guess. And then
Hmm.
seeing that as well of people like they could do things you couldn't do, it was kind of finding your own way in there. I guess I was kind of coming from like a small pond now into this big massive ocean of artists where I never knew that many artists. So it was kind of like, yeah, I can paint, I can draw. Then you go, oh, can I? Oh shit.
But I think what's been great is seeing how your practice has evolved over the last number of years. Is that you have reintroduced painting, you have reintroduced the making, and you have one of the biggest imaginations that I know of, which is like incredible. And we see that in your works and what you share with us in the collective and what you do in your own outside of the collective as well. And like there is no questioning that you have an imagination. It's beyond the limits of reality, which is amazing. So I think you probably didn't give yourself enough credit when you were younger, when you were doing that, and it's great to see that like you finally found that space. So I suppose that kind of brings us into a little bit about now, and like between when you graduated and to today, have you found that there's been like that's what, nearly 10 years now,
Yeah.
less. Well, it's
More?
what, 2014, so close to 10 years. We're coming up to the 10-year
Yeah.
anniversary, which is slightly scary. In that time, what have you done that has evolved your practice, that has made you to be the artist who you are today?
Do you know one of the like this probably sounds so counterproductive, but after college, I found it really hard in fourth year, and there was a time like there was at one point I was dropping out of college, I was leaving, or I wanted like I'll come back the next year. I really felt like I wasn't good enough, and I stopped. I didn't pick up a pencil, pen, probably camera for a year, and I actually went back and studied massage therapy and holistic therapies. So I did that for 2 years, and then giving myself the space to do something else and realizing how important art was to me and the need for myself to do it gave me a huge space to go, okay, I need to create. This isn't just a hobby. It's not just something I want to do as a career. It was something I needed to do for myself. And I had been doing it all my life without realizing it. So giving myself space, it really helped. So I actually went back and I started drawing, and then it wasn't until really COVID again. Like, so I always did dabbled and then did photography and kind of did photography a bit more commercially. But then doing art during COVID, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been missing all my life. I just kind of resparked everything in me and I goes, no, no, this is everything I always wanted to do. Okay, I had a knockback and a setback, but like I really let it knock me back. I shouldn't have, but it gave me the space and time to kind of realize it's more me than the I needed to do it, and not just it wasn't just to create, it was to be at peace with myself. So I
Hmm.
come home from long days sometimes and I'm just like, I have to do something. I'm gonna go insane if I don't do something. So that's why it really became about me. And I think that was the most important thing in my creative journey. It's a lot of people, because I've had people say to me like, oh, but you make time for your art, and I'm like, but my art is a part of me, it's also the career I want to have. it's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like you make time for your jobs too. So when people say that, like, oh, it's only a hobby, I'm like, no, it's more than that. And I think some people, if you have it as a hobby, that's lovely. And if you can step away, but stepping away for so long made me realize how important it was.
Yeah. It's a vocation. We like it's a calling, whether you want to do
Mm.
it or not at this point. You're kind of it is an innate desire that you need to fulfill. And you do so brilliantly. So keep making, because we don't want to see you stop making again. So keep making, and I think you should listen back to this again in a few years and say to yourself that you have the confidence to continue making, and to say that you are very much able to create, and very much and you have the empowerment of yourself to be able to do this. And I think this is it's brilliant. It's brilliant. You've got me lost for words, Piva, because it's so great to see that you had that kind of stop point in your 20s, where it was like, am I good enough? Am I able to do this? Have I a place in the art world? And of course you do. Of course you have a place. And it's great to see that you have reinvigorated your artistic practice. And I think a lot of people would be very sad to see you not making, because you make such amazing work. So, with that in mind, tell us, when you go to make work, what you do, what's around you, what's it look like, what does the space look like?
It's absolutely chaotic. So because I started doing collage, and that was like I always did collage as like primary kind of research and stuff. And then I kind of went, oh no, like I love doing this. And kind of took it more seriously.
Hmm.
And sometimes I do think collage is a bit underrated because you kind of go, oh, you slapdash things together. But the amount of paper I keep is, so anything I like, I'll keep. I have stacks of old magazines from people, um, like from bits in the shop. If the girls are like, "Do you want to keep this bit of wrapping paper that no one wants?" And I'm like, "Yes, that will make something." So my studio is a bit chaotic. Lots of bits and pieces around, lots of glue, lots of ink, loads of gold leaf and stuff. But kind of how my mind works. So I kind of look at the piles and go, okay, I can create something with this. Or sometimes if I just want to create something quickly, I'll flick through a magazine, pull out bits that I like, kind of cut them up and see what I can come out with. There's something very, very therapeutic about collage, like cutting out small details. It kind of can calm me down after a long day. It's you're totally focused, it really focuses your mind. So you're trying to get everything really sharp, pinpoint. So that's how, like those little bits. I also then start a lot of time on the computer. So I would do digital photo montage. I love doing it on digitally because I can, there's nothing that's set in stone.
Hmm.
Same with collage as well. Like you can kind of keep playing until you glue things down, which is great. So I don't use at the moment, I don't have a huge amount of sketchbooks of preliminary parts. Um, so I don't have like this is how I'll start this one and go. I kind of had do ideas and put finished almost slightly finished pieces or things that just work with me in sketchbooks.
Hmm.
So I have a lot of bits and pieces everywhere. But I like to work as I go. So there's no like this is my plan A, B, C. It's kind of let's start and go and okay, that doesn't work, take it away, put something else that doesn't work, take it away, and kind of work through it the one piece. So sometimes you don't get to see the start, middle, and finish piece unless I document it,
Yeah.
which sometimes I can be bad at doing. But it's the way I like to work.
Yeah.
And I found it really good and for myself.
Cool. So, within the work, just looking at from a conceptual point of view, you have creatures, you've a lot of floral work in there, you've got a lot of figures, people, women particularly. Um, is there is there a reason for your use of these individuals, of these things, of these places?
So sometimes I kind of categorize them like I'd have the women that I'm kind of working at on now and some like self-portrait pieces. Then the more kind of upbeat, light-hearted pieces with the like creatures, a lot of florals. I love surrealism and like that area. And it's kind of I find it really nice, when life is just hard, it's dull. You're like, oh, adulting, all these things. I like to make those parts because they're just fun. I'm like, I'd like to live there. I'd like to ride an ostrich to work. Like I have a small little piece I'll send on to you. It's so I actually one I cut up and made it into a new piece, and it's Taxi Home. So it's this beautiful old woman that I got from a card. So again, any card that people give me, it's gonna be kept. It's gonna be cut up. It's gonna be made into something. But she's on an ostrich with a crown, and she's like, yeah, going home after a night out. I'm like, that's the life I want to live.
Definitely. And so like there's a lot of escapism.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like it's great because as you say, like it's interesting because you come home from a busy day of work doing the muggle job and then into doing your art practice and stuff. And while you're escaping, you're creating an escape for everybody else, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I love using bits that I can find. I love the recycling element of
Mm.
collage. So, do you know things that you're like, oh, all these magazines would have been thrown out? And I'm like, no, no, they're mine. My dad actually, so I'm living at home at the moment with my parents, and my dad was like, oh, we need to get rid of all your crap upstairs. And I was like, that's not crap, that's materials. What are you on about? There's nothing I
That's
can't
gold.
use.
That's what's going to make me famous.
Yeah, all these bits of paper.
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously. And it's great because you've got your inspiration all around you all the time. And it's like it's fantastic that you're forming something new from all of these different elements. It's super like
In today's world where we have so much rubbish and this throwaway culture, I think it's lovely to make things from that. You know, kind
mm.
of, I feel like I'm helping the environment just a little bit.
So how often are you making work now?
It depends on the week. Look, most nights I do like to come up. So I have a small little studio. It's up in our attic. Just my desk and everything. So most nights I like to come up and at least even look at something and kind of go, okay, I cut out this piece, add this piece. It might only be an hour every evening. Days off, I try to do the most I can. So like it's always tipping away. Like
Mhm.
I'd love to just spend weeks and weeks. And then some days I could spend hours up until 2 o'clock in the morning up here. But then you're like, I have to get up in a couple of hours, so I have to go to bed. So it is that balance of
Yeah.
trying to live, survive, and make art, which I
Yes.
know there's hundreds of us out there like that.
Is it important that you have that space in the attic? Is it important to go to a studio
Yeah,
space?
I think so. Like my boyfriend's a chef. He gets up at 5 in the morning every morning. So like he goes to bed early. So and then I'm like we're living at home, so there's always people here. So having this little secluded space where I can be messy, I don't have to really worry about people coming in to look at it and be like, oh Jesus, who's walking into my studio? Just having that space where it's completely mine does make a difference.
Mm.
It helps me to relax as well, to give myself space to make the room, make the art. Because I think sometimes if it's you're doing it on your kitchen table, like if that's all you can do, that's all you can do. And I've
Yeah.
done it, but it's hard to be like, okay, I have to clean it away. Where up here, I can leave it, come back, look at it with fresh eyes. I don't have to pull everything out of drawers every day and look at it. So I think it is important, even if it was like a coffee table in a corner of a room. I
Mm.
think you can do with that, and I think a lot of artists do that, and I think that's great. But having like a little space is like it's like your oasis, and
Yeah.
it is another form of escapism.
Mhm. Definitely. And I think even through the last few feature episodes we're talking about, every artist has said the same thing that they need a space where they can just leave and then come
Mhm.
back to and pick up where they left off rather than the whole process of tidying up and cleaning it away. Because I suppose it means that whatever happens in the time between when you finish and when you go back to it again, there's there is that space in your head where you're mulling about what things should go where and how they should go, and especially when you're working with lots of different pieces. And if you've
Yeah.
left something at a certain point, it's like, oh, I know where I left that now, and I can go back to that. Or it's just, I suppose, it's necessary to have everything out there and open, free. So, where are you going to now? What are you working on at the moment?
So some of the 5-9 pieces that I'm working on. So I actually started them probably a year ago, and then I kind of put them away because I felt pulled in another way. But now I've come back to them, and So there was the self-portrait I did, which I didn't even consider it a self-portrait until Rob pointed it out to me. And I was like, oh yeah, that is a self-portrait. I was just using myself. So it's looking at how women are portrayed, because I love that women are used so much, but like a lot of time women are used in art, especially nowadays, in a hyper overalized, sexualized way. Even, and it does, I don't mean in like that they're bearing breasts or you can see whatever, because I don't believe your body is completely like, it's not just a sexualized thing, it's your body, it's part of you. But the way that they're treated by some, especially male artists, it's kind of, I just started to get annoyed. I'm kind of like, there's more to women than, and there's more to female people than just being hyper sexualized. Like, we're not just there for your enjoyment, there's a lot to us. So I was kind of looking at how to represent women in a different manner, but also kind of looking back to history, how we were represented for years on. So a lot of different time periods. They're either goddesses, they're maternal nurses, they're everything. They're not a lot of time. Now, obviously, there's always exceptions, but we're never put in as very stoic, very powerful creatures. It's always slightly more genteel, which obviously is a part of women. Like, but same with men. You know, I can only do it as a female perspective because I'm not male and I don't know that perspective. So I'm just kind of going through our own, looking at how women are portrayed, and how I like to portray them. So it's kind of looking at that, and then kind of looking at kind of like the Byzantine times and the icons, and all this gold and the embellishment, and really making them regal and but powerful at the same time. Well, I hope. Um, and it's just, yeah, kind of going back to that and creating, almost like creating my own icons, my own goddesses.
Wow. So like it's just really interesting as you speak. I'm just referring back to when we spoke earlier about when you took that space in the middle of your 20s to kind of get some freedom and get some space to figure out what and who you are. And then you re-empowered yourself. So now you're re-empowering lots of other people through your artwork. And that's just
I
amazing.
hope so.
Absolutely. No, and it's like it's amazing to see that you are representing women in such an amazing light and in such an empowering way. And it's so strong in how you do it as well. It's simple in its delivery and what you're presenting, and that it's the figure and it's the icon around that and it's the colors that you use that are so poignant. But you are empowering them in the way that you're presenting them. And I think that's stunning. I can't wait to share some new work, even a lot of new work that we will be presenting for you on the collective, and I can't wait to show them to our viewers. Is there any kind of work that you'd like to talk about particularly that you are going to present to us?
Well, I'm working on a new one at the moment,
Okay.
and I kind of love her. She's a bit. It's a photo I did take of a woman who we were helping create her portfolio because she wanted to do modeling. And there's this one strong pose, and she has her head lifted high, and she's stunning. The wind was blowing in her hair, and I've created this huge crown because that's the person she was. She was a mother, and she was a single mother, and she was kind of really like, she was doing the best for her child in every way she could. And like so many women are like that, that they are fighters and they're not allowed to be seen as fighters. And if they are, they're overly emotional or they're dramatic. And I've gotten that where I've given out to people and they're like, oh, you're so dramatic. And you're like, no, we're gonna fight for what we feel is right.
Yeah.
So I'm creating this piece and there's a lot of gold, there's gonna be a lot of embellishment. Um, but she's wearing this beautiful, and then I love creating. So again, there's parts, a lot comes from the magazines, fashion magazines, which I think in one way is poignant in itself, because
Mm.
I'm cutting out from these fashion magazines of things we're meant to wear, how we're meant to look, and we're going to wear them. We're going to own it. We're going to be, but it's you're there themselves. So it's kind of like, and she's a bit of a badass looking. So it's a bit more powerful, and she kind of reminds me of a like fighter, like, yeah, I'm going to go into war, kind of.
A
So I
warrior.
like, yeah, I feel like they're all going to need their own names. So I'm going to have to start naming them.
It sounds like you're like creating a new collection, which is so exciting.
Yeah, that's how I wanted it to be. And then with everything that was going on in the world and with like the Muslim females and everything that was going on with them. Do you know, there's like in this day and age, there's still so much going on, and you're like, why? Just why? There's no need for it. Like, just let live, to everyone, no matter who you are, what you believe in. It's just like, it's just so annoying, and it's so sad to see for people to be struggling. And sometimes I believe that, like, if you are an artist and you have, maybe even if you don't have the greatest following, it's nice to give something out to the public for them to look at and believe in and have a little bit of hope.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's an amazing way to finish our conversation, Viva, because you've just inspired every woman in the world and every artist. So I think thank you so much, firstly, for joining us to share your story, to share your art or your art world, and to share your art practice. I'm so excited to share lots of new work with the collective and with all of our audiences, and everybody do check out Caoimhe's work at www.nuaccollective.com/artist/Caoimhe Heaney, and you can see all of her work there, past, present, and in the future as well. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it, we're on it. And listen to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts from. Thank you so much, Caoimhe. Thank you so much again. I can't say it enough. And we look forward to sharing lots of stuff with everybody in the next few days and over the months of February, as this is your feature month in the collective with the wonderful Luke Hickey, who will also be on the Nua Collective feature podcast in a few weeks' time as well. So make sure you check that out as well. Thank you all for listening, and stay creative.